All right, all you positive heads. On this week's interview episode, I'm very excited to have David Landau here with me on the show. You guys know I'm a sucker for all things magical, and since David is the author of a forthcoming 7-part series entitled Magic is Real, I wanted to get him on the show stat to get a sneak peek into what he's conjuring up. Hey there, David. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thank you so much. It's great to be here. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. I'm so glad you flew in on your broomstick and decided to drop a few spells. Ever since our mutual friend Justin Fairman from Conscious Lifestyle Magazine actually was on the show, maybe a year ago or so, connected us. And as soon as I started talking to you a little bit, saw what you're up to, I was like, yes, definitely got to have you on. So yeah, man, been looking forward to this for quite some time.
Sweet. Same. It's funny that you mentioned the broomstick example, because one of the very first books I ever read on magic was a book by an author named Silver Ravenwolf called To Ride a Silver Broomstick. And I think I read it at 14 in like the mystical section of Borders when they were still around. And It was full of all this stuff, and maybe some of it will come back here.
Beautiful. Yeah. You know what? I'm kind of surprised I use that example too. I would think, a crystal ball, or I have a wizard staff, literally, or sorcerer staff, as I like to refer to it, sitting right above my head that I made, that I take to festivals and whatnot. Literally, it's like floating above me now. So I would have went to one of those props first, but maybe it's because of your silver broomstick. Yeah. Okay. So I like to start off at the same spot. Always ask the same question. Pretty predictable. I always start and end with the same questions. And the question I like to always start off with is, you're in an elevator. Guy next to you says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I'd say my passion is uncovering the truth of how this reality operates, understanding that magic is real, and through intention, awareness, and emotional energy, we can focus and collapse the quantum wave function to affect the probability of what's going to happen next, which means we can hack the holographic matrix of 3D reality, which also means anything we really want to happen and we believe will happen can happen, and we can experience it, and that's magic in 10 seconds.
Is that yeah, you've got that was like 30 floors worth of information in 2. Definitely a man after my own heart. All right. So let's back up. We already touched a little bit on you being 14. How did you end up on this path? Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got here.
Yeah, so I literally just turned 33, and I've been on this path, this life.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Jesus year. Whoa. My whole life.
Happy 3D incarnation anniversary is what I like to always say to people.
Thank you so much. Yeah. My other selves and my other lives now feel included.
We don't want to leave anyone out.
It's been this whole life. It's funny. I remember a past life as a pirate boy. I remember a past life as a matron of a brothel. And if you go back far enough, you're like, wow, there's a whole cast of characters in there. But this whole life, magic has been a thing for me. When I was 5, the first Halloween I remember, I was a magician. When I was a teenager, I was interested in psychology and Buddhism a little bit, but magic a lot more. And so there really hasn't been a time when I didn't enjoy visualizing fantastic things or reading fantasy books, but I always knew deep down that magic was real. And so I started exploring it more seriously once I was 12 and 13, and started reading books and talking to people and figuring out, okay, obviously there's no unicorns flying around with laser beams or dragons and broomsticks. Maybe that exists, but it probably doesn't. What is real? What is the difference between truth and fiction, metaphor and fact? And so from 12 to 16, I had my first training phase. I got trained in Reiki. I got trained in Qigong. I got trained in a few different types of occult systems, between Wicca and divination and channeling and a whole bunch of things, some that had traditions and religions behind them, but most of them didn't, because I wanted to be independent of any one school of thought. I wanted to blend them all together and get to the basis for what is magic and what's the lake that all these rivers have in common. And then I actually did what I felt like was a 10-year samsara from Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha, a great book on the Buddha, is that I did startups for 10, 13 years. I did all this business stuff. I stepped away. And my bigger deep dive was when I turned 30, I had 2 near-death experiences back to back. And
wow.
Yeah. My liver almost gave out. My heart almost gave out. And that was pretty scary.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
It's fine, though. Like I set a very powerful intention or spell when I was 14 that if I didn't follow my intuition and wasn't on my path of my highest self, for life to remind me. And it definitely reminded me those nights in the hospital.
Wow, that's intense.
And so this most recent leg is all the Western doctors failed. The Silicon Valley billionaire said, see this amazing energy healer in Santa Cruz. I saw her. I eventually could start to feel what she did when she waved her hands around me and made strange noises. And then I dove back into studying, and then I just had so many experiences. I'm like, all right, this is not only my life path, but one that makes sense in the real world, which was the fear I had before that moment.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So your near-death experiences, were these near-death experiences as in, out-of-body near-death experience type, go to the other side, have some sort of experience with a lost loved one or, ascended master or whatever it is? Or was this just something that shook you up so much that you sort of reevaluated?
So I wish they were that dramatic, but what my actual experience was just a very mundane series of events. Later on, I got to experience astral projection. I've chatted with and received Shaktipat from Babaji and Thoth and other ascended masters, and it's a wonderful experience. But what I've always wanted was experiences I could share with people for the benefit of other folks, not just to have something for specialness, which is a distraction and an illusion and a massive ego trip. And so the liver thing was... it actually happened after my first TED Talk, where I talked all about supplements and the value of biohacking and, different types of herbs and modafinil and Adderall before the Adderall was known as meth, and all the really, really good values of biohacking, Tim Ferriss, Dave Asprey, all that stuff. And I got to the point where I was taking 150 pills a day, and I just didn't research the interactions. So I was taking, I think at one point, 6 blood thinners and 14 stimulants, and I didn't really know it.
Wow.
And so that plus working full steam ahead for 10 years with no vacations, I burnt out, and I was borderline liver failure, and the doctor's like, stop everything. You can take fish oil, but stop everything else and, do these other things. So I did that. I kind of got over that. And then I had an issue with my heart, and that was pretty intense too. And that actually gave me pretty standard PTSD for a year and a half. So it was a journey which I was hit with all these major things to heal from. And that healing journey made me want to learn, why did everything happen and how could I heal it faster and prevent it? And that just brought me back into these materials, which objectively I feel are the most efficient way to learn how to heal and optimize the human body.
Wow, that's quite the journey. So now the journey has taken us to the point of writing not a 1, 2, or 3-part series, a 7-part series. What is going to be? Is this like the book that's thousands of years from now is going to be on the shelf in some dingy opium den type place that someone's like, oh, here's the book that David Landau wrote all those years ago. Dust it off. All the spells.
If we have shelves and dust in 1,000 years, then we probably failed as magicians, right?
We'll have virtual reality versions of that experience.
That's a good point. Yeah, you'll go in the library, which is a vocabulary term people have to look up because it hasn't been used much from the last 500 years.
Right.
I'm here to serve humanity. I'm here to do my thing. If this is remembered, great. But the stuff in this book, even the stuff that I wrote and edited last month, is leagues above, orders of magnitude above, the stuff that I wrote and channeled 2 years ago. So honestly, I hope and expect that some version of this material will be here, and I more expect it than hope it. But I don't know if it'll be mine, because even myself, I'm they say the best, if you need competition, the best partner or opponent is yourself. So I hope to outdo myself and constantly make revisions and updates. But I'm also talking about stuff that isn't unique to me or my journey, my experience, or my studies, or even the English language. The stuff I tap into is the stuff that is timeless. The stuff is about the fundamental nature of reality. So whether it's me or some other author or some collections of authors, I expect it'll be there. Do I think my stuff will be out there? I can sense that timeline. But it's pretty far out, so I'm not gonna place too many big bets on specifics just yet.
Sure, sure. I like that. I like the way you look at that. So let's talk about what's in it then. Whether I'm the only one that reads it, me and you, or whether it's for eons. What are the 7 parts? What are you breaking down in here? Can you give us some insight, a little peek?
Yeah, for sure. So in the 2 questions, so there's 7 books. What is each about? And I think the beginning question, what is the first book about? So the second question is actually easier and simpler, so we'll cover that first. So the first book is a collection of my experiences and some very high-level transmissions on what magic is, and some very basic and fundamental tools people can use, like how to sense your energy if you haven't sensed chi before, how to recognize a logical fallacy so you're not engaging in self-delusion when you think something is magical, but it's not, and you're fooling yourself, and it's wishful thinking. And so it's really just the foundations and the fundamentals of magic and miracles and the science of all that, and hopefully some good transmissions, because a lot of it is channeled. The second book is going to be a continuation.
Can I stop you there real quick before you go into the second one? When you say a lot of it is channeled, so you're going into a state where are you saying channeled as in there's some entity that is coming through you, or as in you're tapping into, your higher self and you're sort of having a download of information? Because, you have the people out there who okay, I channel, this, I channel Abraham, I channel Bashar, I channel whatever it is. And then, you have the people who are saying, as I feel like I receive oftentimes where it's like blocks of information or downloads, I don't necessarily identify it with anything other than, hey, information is coming to me from somewhere and it's my higher self, whatever, the Akashic records, whatever you call it. So I'm curious in your case, when you say the word channel, what exactly you mean?
So the answer to all 3 questions, including Akashic records, is yes. And it depends on perspective. So from a seventh dimensional perspective, if you use a map where the 7th dimension is unity, all aspects of existence, whether it's a snail or a knife or another person or Thoth or the flying spaghetti monster, are your higher self, because we are God. We're working to realize that and reintegrate as one connected oneness. And so in that abstract sense, everything is your higher self. Now, breaking stuff down into 6th density, 5th density, and then the 4th density that we can conceptualize, the astral plane with non-physical beings or beings that have bodies of energy and light, but that most of us can't perceive, even if our pineal gland's a little bit open. What I tell people who are curious about the authorship for the chapters that are channeled from a 4D perspective is that there's currently 5 sources that have come through. One is a bunch of folks that just identify as the Galactic Federation. And so there's a lot of people I know who tap into that. And that's kind of a collection of, super smart humans who may or may not be in human looking bodies who communicate telepathically. Another source is different ascended masters and different archangels that it's more of a category of a source. So I don't say I work with Melchizedek or I work with Gwog Plarp or whatever beings like Bashar.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah, right. Bashar, he says hi, by the way.
Oh, that's nice of him. Nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you too.
Hey, fella.
Yeah, and as a quick aside, one of the subtitles of the book is "Have fun with spirituality," and I think people don't really do that. Like J.P. Sears is.
I'm with you. I am so with you on that.
He's great in throwing in a little bit of humor, but he's got one style, and we need a lot more. And we need to be able to take the broomsticks and even take all the crazy sexual jokes and other type of humor and make this stuff things that we can access that feel part of life, because magic is part of life. It's not something reserved for a temple or one day of the year.
I love you're saying that, because I literally just had this conversation last week with someone who wants to pursue comedy, and it's always been one of my favorite things in the world. I look back at old yearbooks and people comment on, you're the funniest person I know, and always making humor such a big part of my life, and doing the same type of work that you're doing, which is exactly why we're connecting, of course, on the show. I've seen myself maybe not inject humor as much into my show as is really a part of me. So literally like 2 episodes ago, I do daily episodes, I did this whole confession of coming out about my obsession, and I made it really dramatic. And, then so I had this thing where I just constantly reference Meatloaf all the time, like just randomly for years and years and years. My close friends know this. So I did this on the show. I have this confession, guys, and I made it really dramatic. And it's like, I've got an addiction. It's Meatloaf. And then I go on, this is like a real big build up. Then I go on and then say, it's just something about the way he sings. And so they think it's the meat and it's actually the singer, when really it's both, because I just obsessively talk about it for some reason and interject it anywhere I can. So it's so awesome that you are bringing this topic up right now, because I've been feeling the exact same thing. It's like, get silly with it if that's how you're feeling. Like taking ourselves so seriously is problematic almost, right? It's like this life is not meant to be lived that way.
It's so problematic. There's a couple religions, and there's big ones, and so to be respectful for the good parts of them, I won't name them. We'll call them donkeyism. And donkeyism, because I'm looking at a picture, it says, nobody likes a smart, and it's a picture of a donkey or an ass. And I have it up in my room.
Right.
So followers of donkeyism often have guilt, and they call it donkey guilt, and replace donkey with your religion of choice. And there's guilt around sex. There's guilt around power. There's guilt around money. And it's all this BS programming. And we can get into who wrote that program and what its purpose is and who benefits from it. But for our value right now, it's all that programming that for most of us was unconscious, involuntary, and from our childhoods. And the second we know that we can step back and be a witness of that, we can say, whoa, do I want the same programming? I don't think so. And if you ask anybody who's explored Tantra, which is combining energy work and sex and manifestation, like, why have something, sexual activity, that just has one specific bucket when there's many other areas it can apply and be useful? Or maybe to take something a little bit less sensitive for some people based on people's backgrounds and comfort, you can take prayer. Like, people feel, by and large, this is a huge generalization, that prayer is something that should only be done in church or at funerals or on your own, quiet, in solitude, and it has to be done a certain way to the right being, and you can ask or not ask, and there's all these rules. And I think that's BS.
Well, if you're my dad, you start speaking in Old English for some reason when you say prayers. It's just like, I don't have the heart to tell him the Bible wasn't written in Old English, but
Who knows? If that boosts his connection,
originally,
bless his soul, and that helps take his prayers to the giant train of miracle wishes, and I hope they throw off presents and they manifest for him. Whatever works, right?
Yeah, I hope they hear the prayers and just on a whim decide, yes, I like you, sure, or no, I'm not going to give it to you because I don't like you. Hopefully he catches someone up there in a good mood.
Yeah, true. You get one of the flying spaghetti monster's tentacles, and it just happens to be the right one on his good
day. Right, exactly. So anyway, I took you on a total tangent. You were going into the second part of your book, and I just had to jump all over the humor thing because it's so timely. It's literally what's
the fact that you jumped on it. You feel warm. You can stay here for a while. So there's all this channeled stuff, and one of the things that I found was very interesting about writing what I felt is a critical foundation of magic for anybody, written in language anybody can understand, is not just talking about the light, not just talking about abundance and positivity and love and how do you summon the frequency of joy, how do you fulfill your wishes, and what is the law of attraction really, and what is karma and all that stuff. But if you look at true magic, the stuff that we think is not quite impossible, but so close to impossible, you're not sure if you can allow yourself the bandwidth to wish for it to be true, but deep down you hope it's true, and deeper than that, at some level, you know it's true. Like that part of you, if you want to be able to do any type of magic whatsoever, the most efficient way is through unity consciousness, which goes back to your mentioning of, aren't every single being an aspect of our higher self, including you and I, reflections of each other. And it's simultaneously true that you're an individual being with free will and consciousness, as am I, and we are one, depending on the lens and the
divine dichotomy, right?
Yeah,
or relative truths.
True, yeah. And a great author on that is Larry Dossey, who wrote a book called One Mind, which has a ton of research on this topic, if anybody's interested. So going back to the unity thing, what I realized from writing this book is there is a lot of light, but there is also a lot of darkness that wanted to be expressed. And at one point, when I was in Damanhur, and I purchased a magical item that I actually sell through them as a distributor for them, called an Atlantean pentacle, which has all these really cool mystical symbols, which will be on my website soon.
Now, you're going to have to tell everyone what Damanhur is. I'm familiar, but I bet a lot of people aren't. But you decide when, but just at some point, I want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I'll watch the timer. We'll get into it. Just for the quick version, it's a magical city in Italy that's very closely tied to Atlantis. So in looking at unity consciousness, there is no good, there is no bad, there is no evil, there is no anything. All is one and all is perfect. And that's so abstract, like the concept of infinity. We can get close to it, but as soon as you go there, like as soon as you try to use a word, you limit the definition. But when a magical thing happens, so let's get concrete for a second. There were times when it was raining. I went towards unity. I felt the part of the clouds that were me. I pulled back. The rain stopped. Or there was a being, actually my dad. He was near death. The kidney doctor said his kidneys pretty much failed. He'll need dialysis for life. I got in a state of just knowing and feeling the part of myself that was also that body and working properly. And the same doctor came up 15 minutes later and he said, I don't know what happened, but his kidneys started working again. He won't need dialysis. He'll be fine. And the countless other things, some a lot more flashy, like a floating light in my room, and some a lot more subtle, like a synchronicity, or a funny one, like I'm with a friend and we make a strange sound. At the moment we make the sound, a light that was off goes on at that exact moment. Like there's all sorts of random magic, but at the moments of intentional magic, you actually have to get so close to unity where you and the object of your focus kind of merge, and you feel the shift happening because it's also you that is shifting. Now, there's a lot of magical systems that work differently, that work with days of the week, months of the year, lighting candles, runes, special words. But the highest type of magic, the most efficient, is when you can touch unity. And what I realized is some of the chapters, and I'm clear about which, were actually channeled, one in particular, by a demon. And when I set out to write this book, I thought, okay, I'll work with light beings, I'll work with helpers, I'll share useful stuff, but I'm not going to mess with dark forces. I don't want to hurt anybody. And that was my judgment on them. But from a unity perspective, there is no bad.
They're a part of the whole that is necessary for the rest to exist and be what it is.
Totally. And for somebody reading this book or listening to the audio version when that's done, they're not of risk because I took appropriate precautions with myself, with the transmission, with the editing, to make sure that the transmission got through, but it's not like there's some insidious being who's trying to reach out and mess people up. But what I also talk about in the book is fear can manifest just as much as love. And the point of including chapters on darkness is to give people an opportunity to face their fear. Like there may be one or more readers who heard what I said and were like, whoa, stay away from this guy. But at their core, if that's based on fear, that's just an opportunity for you to transmit that fear with love and trust. And if you can do that, that is your most powerful tool as a magician, wizard, sorcerer, witch, sorceress, Cthulhu channel, like whatever. That is the most powerful tool spiritually and magically is love. And it's one of those things that you only get once you wield it. It's a sort of abstraction that once you see its power, you're like, oh, that, hell yes.
Yeah. It transmutes everything. And it is, very cliche, but so true. It's the answer. My favorite quote, love is the answer. Now, what was the question? It is, it transmutes any and all things, ultimately. And so I'm really curious though, with this part of your series of the book that is coming from shadow, if you will, what exactly sort of information was coming through? What is that like? Is it in stark contrast to the rest of the book, or does it flow perfectly? Like, what's it like?
The core takeaway of, we'll call it the demon chapter, was that all beings want to achieve ascension. As humans, for us, most people's idea of ascension is you're an ascended master, you can part the seas, levitate rocks, heal people with a finger snap, and fly around and be one with God and feel bliss and joy and see across time and choosy reincarnation, and all this really, really cool superpowers of all the spiritual leaders we've ever heard about and the ones still alive today. But what is it like to ascend if you're on the black side of the yin yang? And so that is, it's eventually returning to unity. And so how does a being in darkness return to unity? Do they go to some thing of suffering? Well, at unity, at the event horizon of the black hole, suffering ceases. And so how do you get there if you're in the darkness and love and forgiveness don't come common? And so I shouldn't name the demon here because names have power. So we'll just call him Demon Guy. So Demon Guy was like, and I'm giving very casual language. His language is like very kind of formal and intense and might raise goosebumps. And I can pull up a quote if you want.
Yeah. I'm really interested in this.
Yeah, for sure. So to actually, let me find it really quick.
Yeah, sure.
So instead of paraphrasing, this is transmutation. This is alchemy of the divine. The emotional body serves me. I am its master. To transmute the ingredients of joy and anger in a stew, to truly demonstrate expertise in this, is to claim dominion over the frequency that is emotion.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah, super powerful. And so dominion and domination were things in there. I mean, if you think of hell, and I remember part of my past lives in hell, there isn't like hugs and cuddles. There's hierarchies and there's beings whipping other beings, and there's domination and there's suffering. And to be dominated by a being means that being is more powerful than you. And so the fact that I essentially dominated this demon, I mean, my middle name's Solomon for a reason, he kind of recognized that dominance, and so he shared a few things. And so how essentially demons ascend and how your inner demons can ascend, which anybody can call the shadow or any of the infinite synonyms out there, is by recognizing they're a valid part of the whole, but not more than that. So you may have an alternator in your car, but you don't use that alternator as a cup holder. And so, so being comfortable with the fact that demons exist, yet just like an alternator, you can understand how those forces can coexist with the forces of peacefulness and with archangels, can allow you to drive, and driving is magic.
Yeah, absolutely.